But I'm going to try to inspire you what open data could mean to all of you in your industries. A little bit about myself. I'm a chronic entrepreneur. I started my first startup at the age 27 in '99. I raised 4 million, learned a lot from that. And I'm currently running data.be, which is a business information provider, and lex.be, which is just legal solutions, so text data mining analytics for lawyers and legal experts. And when you do a startup, it's always good to unite with other people in your industry. So I co-founded the FinTech Belgium community and the Legal Tech community. I'm based in Brussels, so I welcome you all in Brussels again. Very happy to see that this year the event could happen here. Now, I will try to take you on a little bit of time travel. So I hope you're going to bear with me for that exercise, because if you think about it, time is nothing else but the movement of the sun and the planets around it. And if you go back in time, it is both an anchor for us, but also a mean to convey hope for things in the future. And what I find very interesting is we take time as a given, a little bit like open data. I mean, it's happening, it's out there, it doesn't belong to anybody. And yet it's interesting that the clergy, who were following fixed rules and dogmas, they were very interested in this open concept of time. And they were interested because they needed it to calculate when the religious high days were happening, like Easter. Very important to calculate when Easter Sunday is going to happen. And so I would say the monks in the monasteries were a little bit the startups. I mean, the gender balance was already very screwed up back in those days, but they were trying to calculate when Easter was going to happen. And so, as a result of that, they needed clocks, first easy sun clocks, then they built mechanisms. And that technology in the day became a prestige thing. Cities started putting clocks on their iconic buildings. And this was influencing daily life. It changed daily life, just like the phone that Raphael was mentioning that we're glued to nowadays. The clocks were giving rhythm to life. When did you have to do what? You could meet somebody and finally get there at the same time. And I think we forget about how those things happened, what the origin was. And so I find it very interesting that many cities started to organize around that. And you had calendars. We know calendar apps today. But we also have clocks on iconic buildings that were there to regulate society, to show it's this time, you need to move on, you need to be on time. So if we fast forward that, we had a big major technological innovation, which was the train in the Industrial Revolution. And the train, although time was calculated on a global scale, each city was running their own time scheme. I mean, they were not coordinated. For those of you who are setting up UTC or NTP service, try to remember what UTC stands for. I'll come back on that in a second. But technology made it necessary to sync time. And so for trains to arrive in two cities, you needed to sync time between them. And so they needed a political decision. So we used something universal that was used locally, and we made political decisions that Greenwich was going to be the central line, and we were going to somehow draw these lines. I mean, I love the one in the United States. At some point, you picked which side of the line is my time zone going to be in. And if anybody ever doing conference calls, you know how challenging those time zones can be and how many errors happen still today as a result of that. But this was a political decision on something that at the basics was nothing political about it. But it works. And UTC, as I said before, is a very weird acronym. It dates from a point in time when you had French and English as major power blocks. And so you had the temps universel coordonné in French, and the English would prefer coordinated universal time, but we can't agree, you know what? We'll take a mix-up of those three letters, and we'll call it UTC. Yeah? I love this little example, because today we have a hard time making compromises, and we still use a lot of acronyms in our industry. So the NTP pool project is a great example of federation, of openness, and I think any Linux server in the world is using that to sync time. And since many people here are from the telecom industry and had to consolidate logs from different servers, you do not want to run them on different time indicators, because it's going to really screw up your billing system in the end. So I know that you're all very happy that this is happening. Now, if we fast forward that, time is used in any calendar. This is the Open-Xchange one, and we use calendars to arrive on time. But as an entrepreneur, it has happened to me that I arrived too early. This is something that is not funny when it happens to you. So I'm going to take you back to when I was 26, a very ambitious entrepreneur. And in '98, I took a plane to Silicon Valley. And I went to pitch in front of iconic VCs on Sand Hill Road. That's where the big ones are, by the way. So it's very concentrated in this ecosystem. And I saw Sequoia, and I saw Index Investors, and Bernard Kleins. And anyway, those names. And I had nothing to lose. And I tried to pitch the idea of a hypervisor and the virtualization concept. So I called it virtualizers back in those days. So for those of you, I'm going to go one slide back, who don't know that concept, it's an abstract layer between the hardware, the bare metal, and your operating system. Anyone who's in the hosting industry or in the cloud, that's basically what fueled that afterwards. And I was laughed away. So there I was with my dreams and this concept and idea, and the portfolio managers who were supposed to be like the most forward-looking for what's the next big thing. They weren't looking at an incremental thing. They laughed at me and said, not a single CIO is not going to want, no. Which transaction is running on which processor, which file is on which server. Yeah? And today we don't even know in which continent they are. Yeah? But back then it seemed very hard for them to grasp this concept. And this is like a warning to all of you. Many of you are busy in doing incremental improvements. But there might be a next big thing out there that seems laughable today. And although you're very knowledgeable about your industry today, it might come and disrupt you completely, or you might miss that big train. So a word of caution there. At about the same time, one of them referred me to Stanford, to a professor, and his wife, Diane Green, was the founder of VMware. So something happened, they did something better than I did. A lesson here, if you're ever going to pitch to a VC, have a team. I was alone. Don't ever do that. They don't like lone entrepreneurs, and they're right about that. Have a working MVP. My second demo, my demo crashed. And so that's not a good sign if you're going to pitch a technology product. And you have to be able to sell the dream. I was 26, I made all the errors. It was all about my technology and look, and this is going to work. And it was not what it was going to deliver to them. So that's a few lessons at 26. I didn't know them at 45. I'm more than willing to share that, and I hope it's useful to some of you, because it's not age-related. One good thing came out of it, I thought. I bought a domain name, virtualization.com. I also bought a version with an S. And I ran a technology blog. And as a part of that, I followed that industry in those early days, early 2000, 2003, the first VMware version, and the open source version, and Xen coming out. And then in 2008, I did an interview with Werner Vogels, who still is the CTO of Amazon. And I was very surprised, because I had a book on scaling with Amazon, and he was dedicating the book. It's in the next slide. It's in the next slides after I explain the hypervisor. And he put there, to the virtualization.com folks, this is still day one, work hard, play hard. Now, a few thoughts on that. Yesterday night, I learned from Scality, who is a partner here, that you should add eat well, very important, take care of your health. And you should amaze your customers. That's like the basic advice in any business. Keep amazing your customers, bring value, you'll be doing fine. They'll find a way to pay you, and in gratitude for bringing that value. But the thing that amazed me is that we were 2008, and I had been following this for like a decade. And he said, it's early days. I was like, early days? I mean, there's all this competition out there. And yet he still thought it was very early days. Yeah, we're doing this thing. And I knew they were using Xen, but they had never publicly disclosed that. And Xen was an open source hypervisor virtualization building block, and it still is today. And so he said, yeah, we're using Xen. So that was big news. Great traffic for my blog, by the way. Getting that news out there, and the Linux community being very happy that it was finally acknowledged that they were being very successful at shipping this into a big company. Second thought around that is very weird that a successful company, and many of you here work in successful companies, hide the fact that they're using open source. Especially in 2008, it was almost like, we don't really want to talk about that. We think it's great, we use it internally. He admitted that they had 20 engineers full-time committing improvements to the Xen core code base. But they had never wanted to say that. So I was like, wow, they're doing this great job, and they don't want to talk about that. Yeah? So lots of thoughts going to my mind, but of course, the day one concept, I didn't know back in the days, is something very crucial within and it became public now. It's like the philosophy, don't become a day two company, stay a day one company all around. And this is really a message, this concept, although Amazon has become one of the GAFAs, the concept as such is part of the recipe of success they had, of keeping that mindset of bringing value to the customer and not falling asleep because cash is rolling in. So you can also be too late. I had my agenda. So I was too early to get money for this crazy idea. And then in 2008, I had another VC. I'll name them, but don't tweet about it. It was Inside Ventures. They were on Fifth Avenue. They mailed me in June 2008, we want to buy your domain. Very good, six-figure amount. So I was like, okay, that's good. I missed the funding. I'm doing another business now. I'm just going to sell them the domain. They wanted to buy it because they had 5 portfolio companies in the virtualization industry, which was growing fast and very hot. Among them was Parallels. And so they were just going to buy this to generate leads for their portfolio companies. That was their idea. So I was like, oh, great. I mean, I'm moving on. I get some money for my crazy idea. And the mistake I made, I didn't jump in a plane and flew to Fifth Avenue. I went there after my summer holidays, the European way. First with the family, we planned and we go there. So I had a great holiday, by the way. But I arrived there on the 15th of September, 2008. For those who recognize the building, bad timing. Lehman Brothers fell over as I woke up in the hotel room and I put on the television. I was like, okay, I see all these people on there. But no, this was a big crisis that you all know about, of course, a little bit. And this is of all time, this crisis. And that's another warning I would give you is like, right now, we're again in a very boom type of economy. You can see many signs. And I've lived through, like, I would say, 2 of those crises. And one was like really almost, I sat there in the office of Inside Ventures, seeing the partners run by, and I was like, I have a meeting with the legal department to sign, you know, my the sale and purchase agreement on this domain, and they were like, that's the least of our concerns. I was, it is a big concern to me. I mean, I flew over for this deal, right? Like, we're pushing $1 billion that we have in cash, under management, into 60 bank accounts, because we are running all that money through one bank. And we'd never thought about the fact that the one bank might fall over. And there was so much uncertainty in the market back then that Sequoia wrote a famous email to all their portfolio companies in 2008, ripped good times. You're out there on your own. We will not chip in more money. We're going to see how this thing shakes down. It's very uncertain times. And so I would really like you not to forget these times. When everything goes good, we forget that those crises happen. But if you want to run a long-term business, you have to be resilient and you have to think about tomorrow these good times can be over. Where will I make money? And what's the next big thing? And so I'm very happy to hear that some VCs didn't do that. They did chip in money in 2008, so that's very good for Open-Xchange. But this is the tulip bubble, 1637. Just to say, in time travel, you can show it. We've been through it all before. Limited supply, high demand. It's a very easy recipe. Here's a little rebus. I'm not going to solve it for you. I think it's an easy one. But after something popped, NASDAQ went down 78%. So imagine, for those of you who are publicly traded, your stocks go down 78% over a 2-year period. That will hurt a lot of people, and that will have a lot of impact internally. It happened. Many of us lived through that period. Yeah? And luckily, we were personally not too affected, but that had a big effect on a lot of people who were less lucky than we are. Bitcoin, I'm not saying it's going to crash. I can only say it looks very much like the tulip bubble. So if you believe history, then it's probably going to crash. If you think, no, this is something so amazing breakthrough, it's going to continue to grow, it's limited supply, and so much money that we created looking for a return, then it might go on for another while. But just be warned, it doesn't look like it's going to be a stable thing. So we're living in a very complex world. And I think as business managers and entrepreneurs, we have a responsibility to think about that and which word do we want to leave. And so certain things do keep me awake at night. And I think that open data can be one of the things we solve that. And so when something is very complex, it's good to go to something simple, more tangible. And so here you have a picture of one of the first train tables in Belgium. the timetable of 1863. Now, why do I come up with a timetable of 1863? Well, it's part of the history lesson, but also because it's the genesis of the Belgian chapter of Open Knowledge Belgium, which is part of a large international umbrella organization. But we founded it because, and I will go one slide ahead first to talk about a trial. We had back then a fellow student, he scraped the website, the modern timetable of the Belgian rail company. And he put it in a readable format and he built a website on it. And he asked, can I do this? And he got no response back. But the website got very successful because the user interface was better than the user interface of our old railway company. And they saw less traffic on their website and they saw that everybody on the train was using this very nice iRail application. So they got jealous and were like, how can they do that? Oh, they scrape our data. We have database rights. Very strong copyright on our database. Just getting it out of our database. We're going to sue the guy. So they sent a cease and desist to the student. He was like, ooh, lawyer letter and huge penalties. I'm going to close the shutdown. But no, I shouldn't. And so we teamed up, we got a lawyer, and we started a legal entity, and that's why it's a non-profit. We chipped in a little bit of money, had found a great lawyer who defended us, and we scared him off by saying, hey, yes, there's database rights, but you're a publicly funded company, and that database is not your product. It's not like it's the golden pages. It is a byproduct of a service you run, and you're a public company, so it's open data. We continue to use it. And so, yeah, they were not happy about that. We had very tough meetings, but last year, I was at a public conference, and they admitted we were on the wrong side of history. Open data is fully part of our new digital strategy. We want to share. Because by now, we found out that the user interface battle, it's probably not the one we should have gone for. We are a train company. We are a transport company. And so if any of the GAFAs or any of the startups comes up with a better integrated solution, and I think all of you who have traveled around the world nowadays with any app, you go to a city and you need to go from A to B and you get these suggestions. You want to walk, you want to bike, you want to have a hill service, you want to have public transport. It became extremely good, this public transport. It's real-time information now, because the public transport companies have opened real-time timetable data, which subway, which train is where, the delays are in there, and so you can easily put that in an algorithm to do routing and optimization on where do you get for what price. And so there is a parallel for all of you there, and I work in this banking industry. The same is happening there. They have the interface. The interface is the access to the customer, and so they're very afraid that if you have account aggregation, which is happening under a technical new regulation called PSD2, that people no longer have to log into their bank account. And so if you think of it, you go to your bank, to their website, but if you no longer have to go to that website, why do you need that bank? I mean, it's a very white label product, what as a consumer, what you use as a bank. And for many of you in the room, you provide a commodity product. I mean, if you're a telco, there's bandwidth, you do IP packages. I mean, your IP package, you can do a little bit on speed, you can work on size of how much you can do a month, but it's not very sexy to differentiate on. So you're really going to have to think on what values and what products do you want to develop to stay ahead of not becoming a dumb pipe, a basic layer commodity. Because contrary to the train companies, you do not have a monopoly. Yeah, there is competition. And so I want to make this connection about the train company feeding that data in. It has done them well. And now there's something else very nice, because our app is still being used. We can put a feedback loop in there. We ask people, oh, so you're boarding a train. How busy is your train? He's like, oh, this is a very empty train. Great, I get time, I can work, I can call, I'm not disturbing anybody. And so now the transport app has more information than the train company, because they haven't equipped the train yet with sensors to see how many people are in there. Yeah? And this is another thing I want to inspire you with. It's called exhaust data. It's like the little breadcrumbs that you have everywhere that today many of you are not using. You have to be very aware of privacy and consent, of course. But you can get a lot of knowledge from that. Like we had Peter Kolpaert, one of the other board members, who did an extrapolation. Just by looking up when do people look for trains, we can predict how busy the trains are going to be, because we have a considerable part of that market. And that's very similar to what the monopolist players have. They have all this data of the usage. We have immense value, but also an extreme barrier for others to enter the market. And Google, if you want to build a new search engine, the search history is a gold mine for Google. It's very hard to overcome that. But many of you probably have good historic data that you could use for things that you haven't thought about yet, that could bring value to your customer. So that was the one I jumped first. A little bit about Open Knowledge International. Lots of, we get this question all the time. Yes, good open data, but what does it do? What's the benefit for society or for companies? What do we get out of it? Well, one of them is open budgets. You can track when a government, our elected politicians with our tax money, they made a budget, and then you can benchmark it to the actuals, and so we get transparency. Yeah? In these days, the crazy, I would say, Trump tweet politics days, it's nice to have some openness on where does the money really go. So the accountability is built in the system. We have open trials for clinical data. Yeah? This is a very important thing. It was always closed, but there's regulators, have to say, the FDA and the European agencies doing that. So you can open those trial results and others can work with them. And we probably as a society get a much better result out of that. There's future TDM on text and data mining, and CCAN, which is the format that governments can use to publish the data. So it's structured data. The reason that your app, on transport app, can manage this so well is because it's published to an open acknowledged format. Just like the time server NTP protocols we talked about earlier, it works because we agreed on an open format that we can enter and exchange. So open data, you can freely reuse it without having to ask anybody and without justifying the purpose. And this is very important. Many of the reuse cases and business models were never imagined at the moment that these data sets were being opened. Yeah. So that's I would say a very important. If you look at the data value chain, and I'm going to try to stick and give you a little bit of a recipe there. We have open data, we have public data, everything on the internet. Not always sure if it's full consent, but let's say it's open, you can get it. And then there's closed data. That's the part that you're not supposed to get to, but that gets spawned anyway. But that's typically a login and a password in the ever since the internet was around as a standard way of authentication. If you want to unlock value in this data economy, we have two types of data. We have the static data, doesn't change, the dynamic one changes all the time. We have structured data, that's easy to work with as an engineer, and we have unstructured. You need to recognize entities in there, you need to do all sorts of stuff to make sense of it. And the real value is by mashing up those three types of data. You use the open data, like for all of you or telcos, if you want to segment your customers, there's great open data sets out there. From statistics that going from average incomes to house prices to schooling so you can get a lot of data to get more efficient or to learn about what value do we bring to or where do we lack internet connections. You don't have to buy those data sets, they're open and they're given away by the governments. Yeah. So go for that holy data grail. Look at what you have internally and how you can mash it up with external open or public data. And secondly, this is a little bit my cookbook. If you're looking for ideas for your business, look at these elements. So for example, notifications. Think about your industry. What can you do with notifications? So I take domains. Typical notification, your renewal is coming up. Another upselling trick would be, here's a very similar domain that's still available, and everybody is trying to do that. Or here's one being auctioned or being released, or it's in quarantine, or stuff like that. Or you could be much more, I would say, proactive and say, oh, watch out, I see you using this domain, it's going to go into quarantine. It's because you didn't update your email address for 15 years, but we see you using that domain. So we're going to escalate this internally and do a concierge human service to really find you. Pick up the phone, do a search so that it doesn't go into the quarantine and disrupts your service and maybe even makes you lose it. You can use your real-time data to unlock a lot of value out of it. One of the ones I like a lot is if you do enriched or linked data. That means you get entities, so for example, a person, a location, a company, a date time stamp, a type of document, and you can put them in a social graph. You can visualize. You can all visualize a great deal of data. And the tools out there to do that, and I know many of you are using them. My two last startups are heavily built on Elasticsearch. You have Kibana, you have Logstash. Who's using those tools in the room? Wow, a lot of hands going up. So another nice example of an open source ecosystem that is thriving. that has gone into many large telcos and hosting providers. Analytics, the ways you visualize, come up with mobile apps based on your data, or use those historic data to predict trends. Yeah? So for any of your industries, you can use these elements to say, okay, I know what in our data lake that we're currently building, because many large companies are still busy in building those data lakes, because 80% of a data project is just cleaning up the data. But once you have that, you're going to be able to do a lot of interesting stuff by looking at some of these elements in this cookbook. So I wish you good luck with that. Old Chinese proverb, you should have planted the tree 20 years ago. But it's not too late. Go ahead, plant yours now with this cookbook. Another Chinese proverb, data is the new oil. Yeah? The only reason I think this one is true is that it become just like all oil, where prices has gone down, the price for data is going down. I think it's going to trend to, it's almost to zero. Yeah, the value of the data itself is trending. Storage cost, I don't need to tell you guys, goes down. Compute power goes down. And the open source tools, they have really matured. We just saw an example of that. And we're here at the company providing you with that. So those are trends. I'll give you examples from another industry to maybe inspire you with healthcare. Because we get this question all the time. Yeah, but what about the big P, the data crack, and the privacy, the data privacy? If you look at the healthcare industry, you could use it the other way around. It's accountability. If I have my data, I can have accountability towards my health providers. You can provide me a much more individual care. Today, almost all of the medicine and vaccination is like this very average middle-aged white man. I mean, I'm probably in the scope of that average, and all the doses are for that persona. But so you don't need that. If you are much lighter than me, or heavier, or you have a different other I would say backgrounds and gene pools, well, there's a different treatment for you, but you won't get it because everything is made on these averages. You could improve the customer service, and we could share some of that data if I would want to. Patient centricity, think about it for you. We heard about amaze your customers. Think about the VRM movement. The VRM movement is the antithesis of the CRM movement. CRM is customer relationship management. This is vendor relationship management. What does it mean? Me as a customer, I need to buy something. I'm going to broadcast the fact that for this period of time, I'm looking for that product, and these are the things you need to know about me. And when I've bought the product, I can pull that back, and only the party where I bought the product will get to keep the data, and the others have to. So that's the ultimate dream. Unfortunately, there's no winning platform out there yet for VRM. If this concept interests you, go and look up Doc Searles. He's a researcher, and he's written a lot about that. And you have the statements here, Fred Wilson from another VC, like we're carrying our medical records. Yeah? And the other startup on the right there wants to help you to have your own patient file locally, and you decide with whom you share it, for what purpose, and for how long. Another startup here trying to avoid vendor lock-in. If you have a pacemaker, your doctor needs to have the same software and reader to follow up or reprogram that pacemaker. If you could have a generic system that does all the pacemaker brands, the cardiologist just has to have one screen and can see all of them, and you can learn across all those pacemakers what's working, what's not working. You can even benchmark the results of them. Software and data can be used for good. I mean, I'm preaching to the converted here. But for example, NASA came up with an app to cut air flight time and fuel use. So that's a nice example that we like of software. It's good for the planet. On the other hand, on the right, you see Volkswagen. They used software good for them, but it came out, it was fake data, I would call it. The exhaust data of the cars, when they were running in a test environment, did something different than in reality. So this was a business decision. I mean, the poor technology guys that get punished for it, no, this was a business decision. We're going to scam the test. And they were not the first one to do it. If those data would have been open, I think it would have been very clear very quickly that something was wrong there. Because the combustion engines are not that different between all the manufacturers, and if several countries would test them with several test methods, it would have been clear much open. On the left is a very recent, and I really love this example. It's not full open data. It's CERN, which has the Large Hadron Collider. So, you know, they shoot these particles, and they look how they splat, and they have enormous sensors around there that generate terabytes per millisecond. I don't know the exact numbers, but I'm told it's huge. they keep the research data private for 3 years. So the CERN researchers try to get the most out of it. And then they say, we looked at it, now we're going to open it. And so a team at MIT took the CERN data, so it's a European-funded project, from what I know. MIT is in the US. They took this open data, and they found something unique in there, which proves an existing theory. So they had a hypothesis being validated on CERN data, where the CERN researchers missed it. So that's great. That's cooperation thanks to open data. It's very abstract. It's very, you need to be an astrophysicist to probably grasp the concepts, but it's extremely interesting that these things are happening. I would like to see the data out straight away. The 3-year period, I would like it to shorten, of course, but it's a nice model. We're getting there. This is all new. Getting scientific data out, it's a little bit the open access movement to which we adhere out of open knowledge as well. If you have government-funded research, the search results should be opened for the common good. What is happening today is that many researchers, they publish in closed journals, and their universities have to pay to buy back the journals and to search in the database to read other articles. So if you look at it, it's quite an insane system because the public pays 3 times. so we very much would like publicly funded search results to be open and to be open data. This came across a few days ago, and it was already mentioned earlier on. When I saw that New York Times tweet coming by my timeline, I was like, it reads like a bio from a spy movie, you know? So we have a Russian hacker sought by the US intelligence service, and they were caught while the Israelis were looking into the Russian spies, looking into the Americans. And you go like, but this is real, this is happening. And so if you think about that, virus scan is the ultimate, of course, attack surface if you want to get into a computer, that's well known. But many of you, the ones that are upselling virus scans to their customers, are facilitating this business. You pick a virus scan, it's a nice business model, you get a nice reseller fee for that, and you sell it to your customer. At the same time, you have all the traffic on your networks. For anything bad to go in or out, so nowadays we have rogue Internet of Things. You have the light bulb, and the light bulb is attacking, is part of a bot network and doing a DDoS. And you've all massively invested in individual firewalls or in capacity to be able to get over those attacks. But why wouldn't you share the fact that you found a rogue IoT lamp or device or toaster or whatever is arriving? And that you share it with other providers and say, okay, if that one does a call in your network, you can ignore it, you can drop the packet. And to make sure there's an accountable system. Like if I say, no, I fixed it. I'm the one consumer that found how to upgrade the firmware on my IoT lamp, that I can ask for a reclassification of my IP address. So that it needs to be an accountable and open system, but this is not happening. In email, we had it with SpamCop and other platforms. To overcome spam, there was a system. Yeah? But it's not fully accountable. Yeah? So there's interesting things happening in there. And again, an idea for all of you. If you could cooperate on that one, I think there's a great level. Instead of selling end-user licenses and take commission on that license for the virus, where you're not sure who's looking along and what they're doing with it, you could look at the traffic going in and say, like, dear consumer, we have detected this. You probably have a hacked IoT device at home, and here's what you can do. Or even better, we blocked it for the moment. You can only use it from within your house network, but not from remote, because we think something wrong is happening there. Everybody is watching along. That camera you've put in your house. Or we detected that you bought this Google device, but it's sending the audio stream all the time. And this was out this week. Before, in the good old internet days, when you had something for free, you knew you were the product. Nowadays, you buy a product, and you're still the product. Yeah? So this is, to me, before we knew it, we were being mined and farmed, but now it's double. You pay for it, and you still get mined. And so, in that case of that Google device, it was like one of those voice interfaces. They're supposed to go on when you say their name. Yeah? But this one was just recording everything all the time and sending it to the mothership, which is not. And this was a small company called Google, right? But if you have the network analytics, you could tell them, hey, there's an audio stream going all the time to this IP address. That's probably not wanted. Yeah? And that's a way that you could provide a service to your customers. Just a thought. You might have many more. What are the challenges that we encounter today with open data? I know there's some European policy people in the room, so we have the PSI compliance, which is a tough one. The privacy one, legal conflict. Privacy is not as simple to manage as we would all like it to be. And so when you say to a government agency, I would like to have that data, you very quickly get it, because, yeah, but maybe you could de-anonymize it in the future, and so I'm not releasing it now. Yeah? And so we really have to do a lot of advocacy work to say, like, this is the current state of technology, open the file, put it online, we'll see what happens with it. And there should be ways and rules about that reuse. And if it's ever discovered that it's used for the bad, you should be able to say, okay, that use, we don't want it, but you outrule it. And that's the plea to have clear rules with everything that we do nowadays. There's a ranking. You can check your country on the yearly index we do out of open knowledge for every single field. Like, what is open? Are your election results open and verifiable, or is it something that a closed committee looks at, and so on. So it's a very I would say, yearly exercise to see how openness is evolving in different countries. And you can see that it's very cultural as well. So privacy is not a universal thing. So for those of you that operate globally, in certain countries, people don't mind that you can find, and think about the Netherlands, for everybody in the Netherlands, you can look up the value of their house, how much they paid for it, how much mortgage is open today, and who were the previous owners, and how the private solution. This is like, if there's Dutch people in the room, they can confirm it on cadastre.nl, you can find this, and they live with it. And in other countries, you're like, what, my house? Nobody's supposed to know how much I bought it for, and let alone know how much mortgage I still have on it. So it's a very cultural thing to know what the data is being kept. Now, this is the first time that I'm going to talk about this in public, but I have been banned by Google. Almost feels like an AA meeting. Hi, I'm Toon, I'm banned by Google. This happened in 2007. I got an email. This was a less nice holiday, August. You feel the robot behind that, right? We reviewed something, and you did something wrong. I need both my hands for this. They do it like this. Pick a finger. Here's 8. You did something wrong. We won't tell you what you did wrong, but read our lists. On one of your websites, you did something wrong. You go like, which website? Which one? I didn't do any of those things. Please tell me which one. We won't tell you. We're Google. We don't have to justify. You get money from us. This was AdSense. So remember, in AdWords, you pay money, you get traffic. In AdSense, you're on the receiving side, you get money from Google. This was me running a business, amongst other the virtualization one, with banners on it, making content, going to conferences. And they said, no, we don't like your model anymore. You're like, hey, but I have a very nice little passive income here. I need to feed the wife and kids. I mean, what? You take this away from me. Where can I complain? We will refer you to our user group, and you can ask questions to fellow AdSense users. You're like, wait, that's not, what's happening? But can I contest this somewhere? No, you can't. You have signed the terms and conditions, which we've updated in the meantime, and by accepting our money, we will pay out what we're due, and we block all your websites. And so I want to bring this feeling to you, because I was very reluctant to put it on there, because I still spent, so if you look at the email, at the back of it, and I have to go back, it says that they cannot partner with me. So I've been banned, and they cannot partner with me anymore. Yeah? So because I didn't follow their guidelines, it's not in there. But so I could partner with them on the paying side. By now, I have this first startup, which I still own half of. I've paid over 3 million euro to Google. So it's okay for them to take my money, but it's no longer okay. And I can call people in Ireland of Google AdWords and other, but no, there's Chinese walls, the AdSense part, and the search part, they're all separated. So you have these monolithic silos and monopolies that really treat you as a good monopolist. Yeah? We don't care, small Belgian guy. Our algorithm determines something, no way to appeal, go away. Yeah. And so it feels a little bit like witch burning, and we're time traveling up and forth. You stood out, there were rules somewhere, you couldn't contest them, we're going to burn you. We put a little cat meme in there, we'll burn the cats along. Who cares? One less witch. Yeah. Very unfair to the witch. What did I do wrong? I might have been a little bit off, but what reason? What was it? No, we have a rule book, and we determined there's a rule, and you cannot contest this, burned. So that's a little bit, I would say, the philosophical part about how big players can get behavior that feels very bad to an end user and to an entrepreneur, and that are very hard to address and that nobody really dares to talk about, Because like, yeah, I would not like Google to cut my AdWords account. And yet here I am, I see two cameras pointing at me. I hope this isn't streamed too widely. They can ban me. And this is going to happen in more and more platforms. On social media and elsewhere, you've built up this whole history. We have an internal room. You did fake news. Banned. Yeah, but I think, to me, it wasn't fake news. Yeah, it's banned. Flat Earth. Well, we've decided that Flat Earth is science now. So if you laugh for that, it's very inappropriate. Banned. Yeah, but Flat Earth is crazy. I mean, these people, did they ever look at the stars and do they understand that the planets turn around us? No. You're not allowed to say that to people. So there's this very big danger that when we have algorithms managing the rules and kicking out what they determine is not wanted behavior, and you cannot appeal to it and talk to a human that has a balanced view on that or that allows you to readdress that, we really are in time of trouble. And we're living fully in that period now. With Facebook and everything getting out about what happened in the election, people being gamed, I think this is something we should seriously think about. And I think open data could address certain parts of that, because I had no problem. I opened all my logs to Google when this happened, which was easy because it was Google Analytics. I said, please show me which traffic was not organic traffic. You're accusing me of fake bot farms clicking on ads. Tell me which one. You have everything. I mean, you already have it. Tell me which one. They wouldn't. Yeah. So I hope I planted a few seeds here on that. Artificial intelligence and machine learning, they're going to disrupt you. You will hear that every time. It's like the fear, uncertainty, and doubt. When people sell you fear, uncertainty, and doubt, they probably want you to buy their product, or they want you to come along. It's an old tactic, even in politics, like, ooh, we have immigrants, let's build a wall, and all the problems in the world will disappear. Yeah. Then we don't have to talk about the tough stuff that takes compromises and where we have to go in a dialogue. Yeah. So there's a lot of fear-mongering going on in artificial intelligence and machine learning. The potential is huge. I have 2 startups in that field, great data scientists. I can tell you there's a lot of work to be done before this stuff is industry ready. And before you want this to run your real production business. Yeah. So please think about how open data can help your industry. I think there's plenty of opportunities, and I mean, this is an older book, The Cathedral and the Bazaar. We go back to the beginning, the cathedral being the central book and the religions determining what should happen in calculating the stars, the Easter event, and making sure that everybody shows up in time for the mass and celebrations. And then we have the bazaar, where we have open discussions and where we can negotiate amongst each other. And if you don't like it, you go to the next one. Yeah. So I very much like that idea. And if you look at what's happening with IoT, you can have all sorts of sensors. This is like almost Star Trek arriving during your health checks. You have chatbots. You just upload a picture and it tells you which medicine it is and when you should take it and how you should do it. So we have a very interesting thing coming along. But what about the ethical side of this? So this is something that keeps me awake at night, and I hope it keeps some of you awake at night. The ethical side of all this technology that we're rolling out, that is happening today, and for which we have not determined the rule sets. But we're putting it in production. It's happening today. And so I'm not going to go into net neutrality, and I hope I'm preaching to the converted. It's a public utility. You shouldn't do it. Let's bring everybody to internet to everybody. But if you look at these 2 initiatives, I want to do that, but we'll do it through our bubble. The left one, Facebook, the right one, Google. Here's fast, free Wi-Fi, but you have to use our tools and we will farm your data. And even if you're a developing country, we think there's lots of potential and we will have the historic data trends. So if a new one wants to come in, the hurdle is extremely high because the market is take it. Beware of those do-good initiatives. So I plea for a new set of rules. Which goes against much of the Silicon Valley mantra of there should be no rules and you should try and it will fix itself. If you look at it years ago, we would discuss in a bar and we'd go to a library to find knowledge. And today we had, and this is something that was said before, the monopolists have gone inbred. There's a few ecosystems and they have almost everything. And it's working in on us. They're bombarding us with messages and we no longer know, I'm in a silo, but I don't know how filtered my silo is. Yeah? And none of us does nowadays with online. And so this is something we should really think about. How do you want? And then this is my last slide. A simple moral dilemma to show how tough this algorithmic decision-making is. Here is a self-driving car. I didn't take the Tesla, they had enough, so I put a nice German brand on there, but they're working on it very hard. There is a malfunction, the car is going to crash. We have 1 millisecond to decide where we're going to go. We're going to crash straight on in the wall, and the driver will die. We're going to take the left, an elderly gentleman shopping for Christmas trees. He's going to brake us, and we're still going to hit a wall. He will die, the passenger will survive. Or we have the two girls, I didn't put them facing to us, so the choice is easier for you. Two girls walking through the tulip crisis, very soft landing, very long hard. You will survive, the two girls will die. Yeah? No injuries. Now, who's going to make that decision? Somebody is going to program this. Yeah? And we're not having a discussion about that. Because if I'm buying a luxury car of 100,000, I want to have do I have the right to have the option to pay 10K extra to be allowed to go for the tulips? Or does my insurance say, for extra premium, we will allow you to get the tulip edition? Yeah, we will name it very nicely. We won't go for the dead young children. The branding department and the marketing will take care of that. Or do we say, we will solve the elderly solution, the less cost for the state, and so that one is less expensive. And you get hurt a bit, so it doesn't look too bad at the end of it. Or do we say, no, if we give you the right to ride a car in public, and there's a malfunction, the driver who has taken that risk and who had the right to drive it in public will die. Yeah? And so this is a very simple example of something we're putting out in the streets today, and we had no debate about who is going to benchmark the data, because this is basically a big sensor on wheels, interpreting data and algorithms determining what they're going to do with it. I didn't hear any debate about this yet. And it's out there in production. All the car manufacturers are doing it. So please, start thinking about this, because your data center is going to do the same. You'll have chatbots to serve customers, you'll cut out people. If you don't have humans with the ethical standards to deal with that, I think we as humanity are in trouble. So I thank you for your attention. Your imagination is the only limit. And I look at Claudia to know if I have time for one question or not.
We are not going to ban you from this stage. So if there are questions, feel free to ask them right now. I'm going to make a quick run with my microphone.
Any question on open data? Who has ever done something with open data? Aha, great. So can I ask you which data set you used? So the transport London. So this is an example of the transport data. And this is, again, as Werner Vogels would say, is day one. It's the basic, the start of it. But you can use this in your company applications, yeah, and incorporate it. And so please use those examples. Talk to your colleagues who've been doing it. It's not hard. The data are out there, and the value you bring to your customers are huge, and to society even huger.
Thank you so much, Toon van Aert, for great ideas, great inspiration.
Yeah.